Assessment for learning is the method of assessment that I was trained in, and I want to talk a little bit about pre-assessment. So pre-assessment helps you with instruction planning, and it helps you differentiate or scaffold or extend around the standard that you're focusing on. For example, in writing, there are the on-demand writing tasks where groups of writers are asked to write a narrative or an argument paper before we actually teach it. Then you can take a look at the samples and you can group students by their actual writing level. Some sixth graders may be writing at seventh grade level and some standards, and some may be writing at third grade level. That allows you to differentiate their learning goals by grade level, which the Common Core specifies what those would be. In reading, pre-assessment in reading, there's a lot of ways to do that. RAS Kids Accelerated Reader, informal reading inventories, I've used those, comprehension quizzes, and hopefully there's data from last year. But if you're talking about a core text that you're teaching, you should pre-assess that text. So have students read it quietly and give them a Google form and have them fill out 2 of those for homework or in class, where you pull out the most difficult sentences that have vocabulary in them, and you have students explain to you what those words mean to make sure that their comprehension is above 95% word recognition and understanding. And then you can give them a comprehension test. Where are the characters? What is the problem? What is the setting? What happened in the beginning, middle, end? And get a sense if they're even understanding. That will help you understand if you're going to be doing a guided reading activity or if you're just going to teach a lesson and a mini lesson. Or if you're going to group students into collaborative groups, because they really may at that point just need to practice a skill with the text. Grammar and spelling takes care of itself with Spelling City and No Red Ink, because they pre-assess by standard and give you that data, and then you can give them their practice activities. So pre-assessment is pretty important. Formative assessments are the assessments I use most of the time. I think most assessments are formative. For example, ongoing writing is formative. You're constantly checking to see if they need more instruction or if they've reached the target or if they're consistently using the skill. Reading logs from literature circles are a reading assessment for formative assessments, because you can teach predicting in a mini lesson, modeling, and think aloud, and then you can see if they're actually doing it in their logs. Or you can observe them and annotate some notes about whether or not they're doing that in their discussions. Group projects pretty much evidently show their understanding of main ideas and concepts and connections and analysis of those. The current score in NoRedInk.com practice activities in Spelling City also tell you their competency in grammar, conventions, and spelling. And essentially anything you're working on in the classroom is a snapshot of their knowledge, reasoning, skills, or performance abilities at that moment. So their formative assessment is also, for me, a summative quiz or test. If I'm following the principles of assessment for learning, I'm going to be reteaching and retesting if students aren't doing well on summative assessments. It just means that there needs to continue to be more practice or more scaffolding until they reach that proficiency on a summative assessment, or we run out of time. Reliable data means that there should be multiple samples over the course of the year to show that the skills are consistently there and they're transferring around different tasks in writing, for example, or in reading. And homework is a great reviewing activity, and that's what homework really should be. It's a assessment. It's formative assessment. Are you still able to, when you read, predict? Let's, out of the blue, have you do some predicting for me in our reading blog and see what it sounds like. So summative assessments basically mean the student does not need you anymore. They've reached proficiency or beyond. And by reaching mastery, they're proficient in this skill consistently throughout the year and in different ways, different tasks and contexts. So until students reach that proficiency, their grades are formative, they're flexible. So this principle of assessment for learning is really difficult to implement within the summative letter-based grading system. or grade book system, I should say.